And she goes back to this point of the word spirituality, and she feels as though people are afraid to talk about spirituality, and they just hide behind this concept. And I come from a point of, well, are people actually doing that? Are people actually, do they not admit that they're spiritual beings? Do they hide behind spirituality? I think that it's mainly academics, mainly these mainstream people who don't want to put their neck on the line, so to speak. And that people generally do have a spiritual quest. And that's just her perception of the world around her. Because we have many, many people being in religious doctrines, but she said herself she's not in a... She's not religious, however she has been in religious backgrounds. So what is spiritual? She actually goes for a long speech, and I agree with a lot of what she said in this speech. She says briefly that we are the nature of our lives. The nature around us dictates or manifests ourselves and our embodiment. She says we have a sustained engagement, living, practicing habits, which enables you to live fully as a human being. And I totally agree with that we have certain habits that enable us to be human, and those habits are sustained through spirituality. And I feel as though that's the whole point of this talk, is that spirituality is really important. And however, I felt as though she was trying to, in one way, agree with spirituality, but another way, say I don't want to use the word spirituality, kind of shy away. She didn't want to admit this whole concept. So Elizabeth Oldfield, she is a Christian, and she's the more kind of religious out of the four people. And she kind of started off saying she feels everyone in this talk is quite brave about talking about spirituality. But I still go to this point, well, why and does people actually feel brave, or feel as though this is it is a big task, but is it brave? Now what I got from her talk was that man, or being human, we perceive as being a fully rational apparatus that takes in information and evaluates that information in a process, and that process kind of differentiates itself from person to person based on their senses, based on their education, based on their perception, and and they're actually and that kind of integrates with their personality and their ego, and that transcends itself into this spiritual realm. And this process of information or processing stores itself within memory. And memory is this kind of translucent or not really tangible thing that then kind of recalculates itself in the process of using that information and excreting that in a kind of creative or more outgoing kind of force. And so we intake information, we excrete it, and I suppose me talking now into this microphone is actually excreting information that I've stored into my brain, and now I'm excreting it out in a way that kind of makes sense to me and my processes of information. And that relates to the spirit, because the spirit is this kind of transcendental kind of information field that we can access, and this metaphysical idea, and yet they never talked about kind of life and death in a serious manner, in a spiritual manner. They just talked about spirituality and our role within society, and I see that we as society need to be more, or say more spiritual, but we need to be more aware of the world around us and not necessarily within ourselves. She also talks about from what I got from there, was the process of rationalizing. This is kind of the ultimate aim, the purpose, or the objective of our life. However, I feel as though many spiritual teachers believe otherwise, that the spiritual teachers think that rationalizing is really only a tool that is like the perception of ourselves, the ego. This is a tool of being alive, of manifesting information and processing it and creating it. Because without creating information, you can't. There will be no information. However, without processing that information, you can't recreate or there can be no manifestation of information. So rationalizing is more of a tool of trying to evaluate, I feel. However, it's not the ultimate aim. Rationalization isn't the aim of life. Kind of scientific fields feel as though rationalizing and collecting data and, looking at kind of a right brain kind of way of thinking. I think it's right brain. And that the spiritual teachers actually felt that spirituality was a way of life, and that's through its rituals and practices of every day going through the self journey. She kind of made a small point, and I kind of took on that and elaborated on it. That Apple makes products, and you can use spirituality as this concept of an Apple product, and that spirituality can be used to hack into something, whatever your imagination can make that something into. But it also can be used for personal endeavours. You can use spirituality or an Apple product as this more entertainment. You can use it for aiding and assisting. I mean, I know, doctors and medical staff even use Apple products because they're, quite handy on the job, and used for, assisting life's kind of mundane tasks of and being more enlightening. And I feel that's what spirituality is in some ways. So although it's leading you on a journey, spirituality is this thing that can be used for good and evil, and many people have talked about how we are being indoctrinated spiritually or consciously, and we are at a war of consciousness. Graham Hancock talks about this, and Festa X, I think his name is. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry. And a lot of speakers in this truth movement talk about the war on consciousness. So then we have Robert Rowland Smith, and he does question this. Why do the talkers in this talk say that spirituality is this kind of taboo topic, and yet everyone in this place is talking about spirituality? And from what I got is that it's necessary because you're an atheist or an agnostic, that means you can't be spiritual. I mean, there's a lot of people who probably would say unequivocally they're not spiritual beings. However, maybe subconsciously they are, either in kind of their dreams and other kind of ways of expressing themselves. They are spiritual in one way. However, they're not consciously spiritual, and here's where the importance, I feel, lies, is that people should be consciously spiritual. They should have an aim for spirituality, and that aim doesn't necessarily mean rationalizing spirituality. It means experiencing your spirit every kind of consciously experience it, not necessarily every day, but a lot of the time. I feel there's this dichotomy, and this is kind of my main point of a whole rant and rave, that we have a social condition that I think needs to be merged together and possibly integrated more. Like the division of negative and positive, and thinking and action. We have a natural balance contained within division. However, where we extend being with I, and the soul with body, self with mind, and spiritual with religion, and social instruments of personal growth, we need to exercise all aspects of being through and out of ourselves. I feel though that kind of sums up what I want to say. However, I've got a few quotes here. Now, the first quote is from Ludwig Wittgenstein. I hope I haven't destroyed his name too badly. Is what is troubling us is the tendency to believe that mind is like a little man within. Now, the second quote actually kind of ties into what Jonathan was saying at the beginning, that we are we face, or on a preface of, in civilization now, that we are destroying the planet and we need to become more spiritual to kind of save ourselves. And it's from a great philosopher called Manly P. Hall, and he was an esoteric philosopher. In his book called Man, Great Symbol of Mysteries, I believe it's called. It says, to gaze upon the wreckage of our present civilization is to realise that when beauty is sacrificed to utility in the hearts of men, existence becomes but a ghastly travesty. I also have another. This was actually on the next page of the book. That education means a realize that of ideals and determination of spiritual values. Now, another quote is by Felix Auger, and he has a book called The Essence of Spirituality. I believe it's quite an old book. I think he's dead by now. But and he made a quote saying, the spiritually minded person is one who regards whatever he undertakes from the point of view of it hindering or furthering his attainment of the supreme end. And later on he also made a quote saying that the spiritual life depends on self-recollection and detachment from the rush of life. It depends on facing frankly the thought of death. It is signalized especially by the identification of self with others, even of the guiltless with the guilty. Spirituality is sometimes spoken of as if it were a kind of moral luxury, a work of supererogation, a token of fastidiousness and over-refinement. It is nothing of the sort. Spirituality is simply morality carried to its furthest bounds. It is not an airy babble of a fancy. It is of the tough fibre of the human heart. David R. Hawkins made a quote in a book called Power versus Force. There is no antidepressant that will cure a depression that's spiritually based, for the malaise doesn't originate from the brain dysfunction, but from an accurate response to the disgregation of life. And Martin Hedginger, I think that's how Hedginger, made a quote, I'm not sure where and from which literature work, but if I take death into my life, acknowledge it and face it squarely, I will free myself from the anxiety of death and the pettiness of life, and only then will I be free to become myself. I think that's quite a profound quote. And Franz Hertzmann made a quite long quote, and says, "The person in whom the spiritual principle has become entirely inactive is morally dead. Although his body may be full of life and his earthly soul full of animal desires, such spiritless living corpses or shells are often seen as fashionable society, as well as in the crowds where the vulgar assemble. A person in whom the principle of reason has become inactive is intellectually dead. Although his body may be full of animal life, lunatics are dead people, in whom reason has ceased to live." And I think that kind of sums it up. I'll leave a link at the bottom of this page if you want to look into the what's called Moses, Paul and Swedenborg, 3 steps of rational spirituality, and I thought it was very good. I haven't actually read it all myself, but on doing some research on this topic, I've actually come across the link, so I can't really talk on depth on that. But anyway, I think that's time to round up. Please subscribe to my blog, to my YouTube channel, and I will, if you got to the end of this video, see you next time. Thank you.